Mean Old Lion Media, Sunseeker TV, and ETC Productions presents Umi Says, the podcast.
Umi Says, shine your light on the world. Shine your light for the world to see.
Welcome. You're listening to the audio podcast of Umi Says, where we celebrate the life and culture. And normally I say women of grace, but I've been getting a lot of requests and a lot of my mentees. I say mentees because the men who are drawn to me, and that's going to be some new segments, and I'm really proud and happy to stand on that platform and support my mentees. So I have the honor today to introduce to my audience and to the podcast Brandon Bmike Odoms of New Orleans, and we all know him from as being a staple in his community with his B Studios and all the accolades that he has done. But it's not just here about his accolades, it's just about connecting us, as I feel, all of these young artists, and this platform has allowed me to have these type of conversations, which I kind of like had when I'm having them with Yasin. So when he introduces me to his peers and his group of friends that surround him, the Umi in me embraces all of you. And I just take you all in as not children, but my sons. I embrace that. And it truly, truly is, it's an honor. So it's an honor to introduce you, to be here, have this conversation with you, share this space and time with you. I want to say thank you. I want to applaud you and give you your flowers now while you're here, because you're doing some amazing things for your community. And to let you know how proud we are of you, and how proud I am that you allowing me to share this space and time with you. It's so important, and I'm grateful. So we're gonna get right into it and just converse.
Yes, ma'am.
So, I also follow you on Instagram, which I love that platform because it helps you to see, things that people are doing, that what they can share with you that they're doing, and you have you're doing some amazing things. I want to thank you first for doing the mural of my grandson, Little Yasin. That was powerful. That was really big. I'm not sure where we were. We were either I don't think we were in Africa at the time, but it's between there and Spain. And that was really big. He was so amped. So that he was like, oh my God, that was a nice little feature. So for the family, that was really cool. But all the studio work that you have done, because you and Yasin go back, way back. And he always seems to have had some of the most interesting. His friends have always been interesting from young, and that's been good to embrace. His friends, and we become family, so that's really good. So just tell me how are you doing? How are you feeling?
I'm blessed. I'm grateful to be here. I'm humbled and I'm excited by the opportunity, the invitation to be on the podcast. But yeah, I'm blessed. I'm in London. This is actually my first time here, and I'm grateful that the art or the creativity or whatever you want to call it, that it continues to make room and continues to allow me opportunities to just to see the world. And so so I'm feeling really grateful right now.
That's really good. And what you're doing for your community as well, and is amazing, because I'm sure with the youth, and that's so important. They can really identify. They can identify with you and see themselves in you, and that's really good. You have so many things you've done in the community. You just had the opportunity to. I read about you doing the buses. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
You did the Ben and Jerry, the ice cream. Yeah, you was able to collab with that. The Mothers of the Movement. That was really, and now one brick at a time. But you're you really, your imprint is amazing,
Thank
and
you.
not just as an artist, but the way you started out. Because
Hmm.
give us that, how you started out.
Yeah, so I'm from New Orleans, and I feel like, like you mentioned, I think New Orleans is a magical place. I think anybody who experiences it or gets an opportunity to touch it in any way can agree that there is something special about that city. And so being from New Orleans definitely afforded me a level of understanding about what art and creativity can do, about why it exists. Because New Orleans is a place where the culture is so rich, and I grew up seeing examples of artists that weren't interested in it for the fame or the fortune. They understood art as a survival technology, art as a means to just make living a little bit better. And so I grew up with these examples of the way we cook in New Orleans, the way we perform, the way we converse with each other. It's all about including a community and creating a sense of just strong connection with each other. And so I grew up with that example, and um I always had an interest in art, and I always was a creative person. My parents encouraged that in me. They saw that in me. And so, yeah, so I've been on this journey of just trying to explore what it means to be an artist. And I mean, I can go down the list of how that manifested for me in the ways in which is happening now. But it's definitely been a journey. Deeply inspired by the legacies of what came before me. I'm a real big fan of history. So understanding how, especially in the Black community and Black history, how art has always been such an important, powerful means for us to transform where we are and for us to see beyond what's in front of us. And so, yeah, I mean, I definitely have been a product of those that love me, a product of the history that I'm a part of, a product of the city that I'm from. All these things kind of make me into the artist that I am today.
That's great. You could tell you're definitely loved by your ancestors, because you make that a major part of
Definitely.
your collage is, honoring them. And you could tell they are the wings, they are the wind beneath your wings. They truly are, and that continues to rise you up. And that's important. That's one thing that I like, because it's important for our youth to see
Hmm.
that synergy between us,
Right.
because sometimes systemically society can, after a certain age group, you can become somewhat invisible in a
Right.
societal way. But when the generations that are after us embrace, and we embrace them, and we show the real magic and that connection, then the youth can continue to do the same with
Hmm.
themselves. And I think sometimes the media doesn't promote that, because then that's not to the system's advantage. It's only to strengthen and build families. So I totally commend you. And as the youth are watching you, I'm sure that they are taking note to that, and they're going to hold on to everything that you're projecting, because you definitely know whose shoulders you stand on, and
Definitely.
you definitely give them that respect. And that's good, because together we could do this here. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely,
yeah,
definitely. No,
yeah,
I deeply agree because I definitely I feel that there's a need for that connection. You know what I mean? But and I could credit that back to New Orleans, like that being such an old city. There's so many old cultural practices. There's so many ancient practices that we do there that sometimes it's hard to even explain to people, why we go to Congo Square on Sunday, or why we second line on Sunday, or why, the things that we've been doing since I was a child. And the way you explain it is to talk about the past, is to talk about who came before us, and how that led the foundation to where we are now. So I definitely believe that that unique geographic location of New Orleans caused me to have this profound, I believe, appreciation for the past, and to clearly see how I was connected to it, how I wasn't, how I'm not disconnected. And I think sometimes when I'm talking to young people, I think it's reminding them of how connected they are to the past, how connected they are to those who are older than them, those who came before them, etc. Because it's so easy for us to just assume that our gift is our ability to disconnect and just be unique and just be brand new. But I feel like our gift is to understand how deep that connection is, and that there's nothing in front of us that those before us haven't overcame, or found a better way to just overcome those obstacles. So for me, looking at history has always been an attempt to just to understand the best of what came before us, to figure out how we can move on stronger as a collective. So it's
Yeah,
definitely an important part.
and that is definitely in New Orleans. That is definitely weaved into the community.
Hmm.
It's very very natural because it's very community based there. And when we were out there for some time, and Yassine moved his family out there after Katrina,
Hmm.
that was something that I remember that being in my community growing up. But there is a point where the weaving of that thread has gotten thinner and thinner. But
You're
then
right,
going
right.
back to New Orleans, you saw where that was still strong. It was a bond, and
Definitely.
that was weaved intrinsically into every community. It didn't matter what
Hmm.
creed or color or any of that. It was really community, and where village was definitely. And then with the histories, and then the food, you come together through, the food, but some of the best. Oh my God, the food.
Definitely.
If you're not a foodie, when you get there, you're gonna end up one. And I haven't had a beignet like those on everything. I'm like, oh my God, I haven't had a beignet like that, and it'll never leave you. It'll never leave you till you
Definitely.
get back, and then you be like, so that's
Yeah,
really
definitely.
that's really cool. And New Orleans is with everything that New Orleans goes through, their ebbs and flows.
Hmm.
It's just amazing how the community stays
Right.
solid, and that's very important. We were talking about New Orleans the other day, and I seen he said New Orleans is the type of environment. We was talking about borders, and he said there's borders within New Orleans. There's
Hmm.
borders, yeah. So if you wanna, there are really no borders. That's what we were saying. But within there is definitely intrinsic um,
Yeah.
historical. I would say
Hmm.
that historical, like stories that are solid. New Orleans is very interesting. Like you said, it's very magical. And so many great things go on there. I was thinking too, as even the way you celebrate death, it's
Hmm.
just wonderful. Nowhere else. I mean,
Yeah.
where it's just open, and that's where I learned of the second line and the third line,
Hmm.
and that becomes like an event that you leave your
Hmm.
house for to go see, and that's
Yeah.
just great. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, definitely. I think there's a lot of poetry in how life is in New Orleans. There's this, the adage, they call it the Big Easy, but I think there is it's a very it's a very Buddhist city in a way, because there's this sense of presence where it's kind of like the Big Easy, meaning like to be present is the most important aspect of existing there. A lot of people get frustrated with New Orleans because they feel like there's no strong aspirations for better, in the way you would see in some of the major cities where people are competing and racing to get to some destination of status. I think in New Orleans, what's beautiful about it is that we understand that the greatest experiences we can have are right in front of us, and they're available. The second lines, like you said, like you hear the music, you go to it. There's nobody waiting for you to show your ticket or to show your VIP status. Is like, no, you walk up to the festivity and you're a part of it. The same with the way the food is. Yes, there are the top tier restaurants, but you can go to any corner store in New Orleans and get a very, I would say, some of the best meals. And so I think there is an aspect of New Orleans um, that is very beautiful in that way. And I think that the borders that you speak about. You know, there's different wards in New Orleans. There's a different there's the Ninth Ward, which is across the canal. There's I think up to, it goes from 1 to 15. And then there's a few numbers that don't exist when it comes to the wards. But yes, New Orleans as an old city, I mean, there's an African perspective to it in terms of the the impact and influence of enslaved Africans and the time spent there. There's a French aspect, there's a Spanish aspect, there is a German aspect. There's all this amalgamation of cultures that have created this very rich city. And I think the legacy of it today that you see is this gumbo. You know, you see this mix, but I think at its best, there is this idea of resilience, because when you think about the most the major foods from New Orleans, like all the things that people would put at the top of the list as like, these are the foods that I go to New Orleans for. Most, if not all of those foods is connected to West Africa. It's connected to this culture that said, even though this period of enslavement happened, these individuals said, you can have my body, but you can't have my culture. They snuck in these forms of resistance through culture, through food, through music. You know, Second Lines is so interesting. There's these videos from West Africa where one would think it's in New Orleans, the way the second line dances and the way things are happening. So what I enjoy about New Orleans is that there seems to be, even though it's hard to explain because it happens so natural, but there is this direct connection to West Africa. There's this direct connection to Cuba. There's this direct connection culturally. And these are not things that the kids that are doing it, if you tell them, yo, you know, those second line dances you're doing, I could show you some videos in West Africa, some people doing the same thing. You know, they might not see it that way. They just see it as a natural part of what it means to be in that space. So yeah, I mean, I'm biased, obviously, but I feel like New Orleans is one of those magical spaces that continues to teach me, even as an adult. You know, it continues to teach me what it means to exist and the resiliency. You know, we keep bouncing back no matter what gets thrown at us, and there's a reason for that. There's a certain beauty in that, in the dysfunction. And I remember Yassine a while ago, he was saying he had a quote about New Orleans that I still use to this day. He said, New Orleans is like a Rubik's Cube. You keep playing with it and then you realize you're never going to figure it out, so you put it down. And I do feel there's an element of that as well, where there is this mystery, this intrigue to it, but then you realize, you know what, no matter what I do, it's not going to make sense, so I'm gonna just let it be what it is. So
And I'm not here
yeah,
to figure it out, you know, like you
right,
said, I just want to be in the presence of it. And that is what, you know, well, nowadays to some degree, we have lost, I don't want to say lost, we have to regain it. And I think if we can continue to support one another, to, you know, stay within those that present, just be present, because right now, just like now we're speaking, we only have this moment right now. This is the most important thing going on between me and you.
hmm,
And when the audience gets it, hopefully, because when you can pay attention and give something or what you're doing, that attention for that moment, you're really in the presence. And yeah, it's that's good, because sometimes we get so distracted with doing it, you know, like multitasking, doing this, doing that, and we got to be in the presence, because that racing, but the big easy does, it slows you
right,
down. And like when you go to different nations, you know, certain places, it just really, and it's not about slowing down. I think it realigns you with a
right,
pace that's more natural to your heartbeat.
hmm,
I experienced that in some places too, and I'm like, wow. And then you start realizing where a certain pace is what is more unnatural than it is natural. And then you start to have to take accountability for just being in alignment with your own heartbeat and all the things that are going on inside of you. And so that's really good. So now you're doing this tour with Will. Kudos to
hmm.
you on the cover.
Thank
Amazing.
you.
And I'm sure this is truly another elevation of your learning experience to see him, because I was watching some snippets of you know, what they're posting, and I'm like, you know, I was like, wow, you know, you really can yeah, I can, yeah, that's bold. to
Yeah,
to bear
definitely.
to bear yourself. What I got
Hmm.
out of it, how it hit me, is to be that bold. And wow, I just say wow. And I know different things hit different people in different ways, but that level of boldness and ownership of your life like that is something to truly be commended. So, it's good to know that, he has a synergy with like-minded people in this here, in not, I don't want to say the business, in the skill set of art, that
Hmm.
you can truly uphold one another in a humane level, and not just for what the attention it breeds, but for
Right.
the humane level of it. So when you look at each other and he looks at you, you look at him, or even your surrounding support staff, it's humane. It's not, there's more to it than just giving the public all of this. It's a point of support, and yeah, support, and just good energy to say, I got you, you got me.
Right.
And that's really good. That's really good, because it's about keeping good people around you, and to hold you up, because that's not and it's not about being easy, but it can be very taxing on your body,
Hmm.
and your energy, because we're all, sometimes we forget this is, you don't just wake up like this. You
Right.
really don't.
Right.
Some days you wake up, like I was watching one of the clips and said, I don't want to do this,
Right.
like I just don't want to do this today. And that's it, and that's to be commended. So I'm glad you guys have each other to support one another through this journey. Make the best of it, have some fun with it, and just laugh through this whole thing, because that's really good, and being in the moment of that. So kudos to that. And accolades to you for the cover. That was just dead on. Now inspiring, not inspiration. I don't want to get into these here,
Hmm.
corny questions, what inspired you or whatever, but I'm sure, because you don't know what inspires you. It just happens, because sometimes I want to
Yeah.
write and I can't think of anything, even if I know what I'm have to write about, be it,
Hmm.
a business plan or an email. And then it just comes and I got to run to my pad, because I
Right.
keep one in the living room, the kitchen, the bathroom, the bedroom,
Mhm.
have notepads everywhere, because when it comes, it just comes.
Right.
But you just hit it dead on. And I think that has a lot to do with just not that you have a particular style, but you could see that just came.
Hmm.
That was definitely between you and your creator.
Definitely. Definitely. No, it was definitely a surreal experience. It has been still. I mean, we do a summer session in New Orleans at Studio B, and it's was our ninth year, and every year I show them. There are two interviews from Will Smith that I would show the students just as a way to kind of get them to see beyond the celebrity, to see the thought and the mind that goes into the work, that the people we celebrate, and the mind that goes into the work, that it's not just an accident, it's not just they got lucky, but there is some deep focus and discipline that goes into it. So there's these two interviews I always show, um and so it was just surreal when I got the opportunity, and I got the call to there was a previous project we did together, and then from that project, um years later, this came to the forefront as well. um and then the conversation with his team, and I got a shout out to one of his right hands, Jaina Babatunde Bay. She was like one of the ones who quarterbacked the whole thing, and she we had these conversations about what it should look like, what the cover could be based off of their understanding of my work. And they just kept saying things like, we want it to be iconic, we want it to be iconic. And for me, I'm like, I don't know what that means. I understand the term, but I don't know what that means in the context of this project. And so they sent me a copy of the book. This was early this summer. They sent me a copy. I'm reading through the book, and then I got this vision of creating, because I'm a fan of playing with the permanence of art. Um, I think being a street artist, it forces you to fall in love with the idea that everything exists for a moment. That sometimes I think artists are driven by the idea of permanence and things lasting forever. You want your work to be preserved by some institutions. You want this idea that your work is going to be here forever. I've always been a fan of the idea that my work won't be here forever. And I like the idea of destroying my work or just allowing my work to change as time moves on. And so I pitched the idea of doing a series of portraits of Will on the same canvas. But after I created each portrait, I would cover it up. And so it was almost like a performance just for me, because the audience ultimately wouldn't see these portraits. It was just a way for me to sort of like create this context, or to create this moment, or to try to capture this moment. And so basically on the cover, underneath the portrait of Will that you see, there's at least 4 other portraits of Will underneath that were created and then covered. And then I used the titles of chapters in the book and I covered that. And so it was just like this performance. I like to relate my paintings to performances where I was like, okay, I know I'm gonna be on this stage for a couple hours. I'm going to do this performance on this canvas type thing. And surprisingly, they really liked that idea. And I was kind of, because I thought they might be like, oh no, we don't want to like have you covering up these faces because those are assets we could use, or et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, so once I knew we were on the same page with that, then I got really excited about figuring out what that would look like. And yeah, so it's been amazing to see now that the book is out, to see it on shelves, to see people share the images of the cover. And as well, during the book tour, this in London will be our 5th city. And just to see how on stage they've created these beautiful video elements that just continue throughout the conversation on stage, where the different elements of the cover are animated or muted, or, so it's been really beautiful to see how they've woven this art into into the whole experience. So I'm excited. My family's excited. My parents, they sending me links and stuff all the time and asking me to send them back autographed books, and I'm like, so it's been beautiful.
That's great. That's great. Is Spain on the tour at all? I have to
So,
ask that.
so unfortunately, this is the last date for now.
Okay.
This London date. I know they're really exploring the idea, because Will's enjoying this, and so they're exploring the idea of how to continue, given his
Oh,
schedule is
cool.
so hectic. So
That's cool.
God willing, there'll be some more dates, because I'm enjoying it too. I mean, I'm
That's
enjoying.
And I know everybody needs a break, like we said, we're back to the human aspect of living.
Right.
And that's what's important, because until you do that, you can't get out and tour anything. You just be like,
Right.
yeah, so yeah, renew, restore, rejuvenate, and replenish. And then you can share a little bit more with the rest of us. But yeah, this is really cool. That's really good. I'm
No,
very happy for you. Not just this year. You deserve it, because
thank you.
all your works before that led up to this, and all your works from this point on will lead up to more. And I think that's the inspiration that our youth need to recognize, that once you, like you said, everything starts with an empty canvas. And
Mm-hmm.
I like that what you said. And I also like that you say on your IG page, standing at the threshold of labor and
Mm-hmm.
labor and dreams.
And it's funny, that's a quote from your son. That's Yassine said that. We
Oh
were
my
we,
gosh.
we were working on a project, him and Manny Fresh, and it was between the time when he was in New Orleans and then also in Houston, and I was, two both of them incredible artists, and getting them to sit down and really focus on working together and figuring out what that looks like. And there was a few records, and that was a quote from one of the records that he said, "Portrait of a man in a doorway, standing at the threshold of labor and dreams," and that just stuck with me because I'm thinking about it like it is a painted picture, And oftentimes in my life, I continually feel like that, at this threshold of both of these, this dichotomy of the dream, and also what's required to make that dream, to make it manifest, to make it real. So yeah, that always stuck with me. But yeah, that's definitely, that's a quote from Yassine.
That's good. And what an example for you without to you and that this whole eclectic thing, like you said, Manny Fresh, yourself, Will Smith, Yassine, Kweli, Kanye, even in that, there's such a powerful synergy
Hmm.
of men that and I hope for the generations coming after and the current generation and even with our elders to see the importance of the synergy of family, the unit
Right.
of just coming together. We all are different, but respecting each other's differences to the degree that we can continue to support one another, because that's what's most important, the diversity.
Right.
No one
Definitely.
wants to be this, everybody can't be the same, but supporting the diversity. And I like what you're
Right.
also doing with the mothers of
Hmm.
the movement. That's amazing. That's truly, truly amazing. And there's one other thing I wanted to touch on. Something I have a little bit of an issue with. They say like, daddy's
Hmm.
girl. But when and it's like, so, oh yeah, daddy's girl. But I want to express the sentiment of a son to a mother or grandmother. The
Hmm.
women in their lives and how important that is, and how important it is even in how men choose
Hmm.
the importance of that, because when you have men need I'm even learning at this point, watching my sons in their full capacity as men,
Hmm.
and understanding what that is, because there's so much going on about single parenting, blah 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 blah. But there's a connection, and we'll say daddy's girl, and that'll be so like, oh yeah, 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 so cute, cute, cute. But then if
Hmm.
there's like, oh, but he's a mama's boy, it's there's a twist on it that
Hmm.
doesn't have that enlightenment.
Hmm.
And as and I have a lot of young mentees, like I said, young men that
Hmm.
they call on me and we speak and we kick it, and
Hmm.
they get a different kind of energy, as far as I'm sure, like a motherly type of you know yeah,
Hmm.
I just want to say, just want to kick it, and how do you feel about this and that, and it gives them a different level of understanding, not just about themselves, but about who they are in the world, and some things what they should do. So in regard to that, and because most men say, no, I'm not a mama's boy,
Right.
and it's
Right.
not
Right.
about being a mama's boy, but just from a man's perspective, submitting to the love between a mother and a son. Just
Mm.
describe that as a man, because as a woman, you really, I'm describing myself and how I feel.
Right.
But to describe that in a man's perspective, how would you put that?
I think that's such an important. It's such a strong foundation. I mean, I think it's all. I feel like it's always been that way. You think about saying your mama was like a war cry. It was like a call for. That's when lights out, and you just like, nah. That's the line you can't cross. And so I think it's always been innate and always been important. I think there is sometimes that fear of the sensitivity that comes from it, or the vulnerability that comes from that idea. That when you think about the connection one has with their mother or their grandmother, and how it makes them vulnerable, I think sometimes there's some discomfort with that. But I understand, that, like, I think it was Dr. Cornel West who said, I am who I am because of who loved me. And you think about where you see love, and that there's this artist, and he's got a song where he talks about seeing the creator in his mother and the woman in his life. He talks about his sister, he talks about his mother, and he talks about his partner. And he said, if God is love, then these are the places I've seen it. and he goes down this list of how he's seen love through his mom, through his grandmother, through his sister. I think that becomes the short of it. You know, like this is where at most times where that love is the most supreme. You know, you think about the relationship. I think about, for me, I think about the relationship I have with my mother, the relationship I have with my grandmother who's passed now. And I think about these are the spaces where love has always been supreme, where that unconditional love existed on such a strong and supreme level. And also, I think there's so many ways to navigate those lessons too, because that unconditional love was always met with a very sharp critique. You know, these were people who weren't afraid to tell you when you wasn't at your best. You received it because you knew it came with love. You knew it wasn't just to tear you down, it was to make you better. And so yeah, when I think about all my peers, the men in my family or the men in my network, I think about how in all of them, I don't think there's any one of them where there was tension with their relationship with their mother or the matriarch in their family. You know, I think it was always like the source of power, the source of inspiration, the source of love. And I think that's very true for our community. I think it's always been that way historically. You know, when you look at why it was that way in terms of why, especially Black mothers raise their sons a certain way and raise their daughters a certain way. You know, there's entire studies on that conversation, in terms of why society kind of created this dependency or created this lack of independence, out of protection. You know, when mothers saw what was happening to Black men, they wanted to protect their sons and they wanted to raise them in a way that preserved their innocence to the best as possible. Um, and which is always interesting. You know, you see these stories where you know, you see these kids who make the wrong decision and they you know they do something that they made the wrong decision in that moment, and you see the person who's the first to defend them and the first to want to uplift them is the mother, is the one that says, no, that's not who my child is, that's not all of who they are. And I think we all need that. We all need that person that can look at us, even at our worst moment, even at our darkest moment, and say, that's not all you are. That, yeah, you made a decision, but I know that's not completely who you are. And yes, I think there's a lot to be said about how a mother is able to do that, how a mother is able to see. You know, I think about my grandmother and the way she would, you know, sometimes we'll be like, my uncle is tripping or this person is tripping, like, but my grandmother would be the one that was like, despite whatever was happening on the surface, she still understood that they were more than that. And she loved them with that in mind.
I recently learned that the estrogen in a woman
Mm-hmm.
that she releases when she speaks to her children, her grandchildren, and let's give some love to the aunties too. That
Mm-hmm.
there's the estrogen that comes out of her. It delivers a certain amount of comfort to your spirit and to your soul.
That's
And
powerful.
that was very interesting. I was in a therapy session a couple of weeks ago, and when I heard that, I was like, wow, that was very important. They said that's why sometimes in certain studies of when you take the elephants, when they took the fathers, the male elephants out, and the children were just the little baby elephants. They were just running around. They
Mm-hmm.
and then at the presence, when the herd of the fathers came back, just automatically
It's
they got
straighten up,
back
yeah.
in line. There's another study too about the buffalo and the cow,
Mm-hmm.
and it was there's a storm. The cows ran away from the storm, and the buffaloes ran into the storm. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's this question about which was the smartest move from a
Mm-hmm.
livestock perspective.
Hmm.
And that was very interesting because some people said the cows, but no, it was the buffalo, because they said you run right into it, it passes. But
Hmm.
with the cows, the storm chased them, caught up with them, and
Right.
and then so they had to deal with the storm three times. They had to deal with
Right.
the storm before, during, and after.
Right. That's
So,
powerful.
but they was like, yeah, they said there's a release from women, that because we carry that estrogen that just gives children or who your family the level of comfort with you. And I think for what you're saying, when a mother or grandmother can say something, be it sharp or sweet, it hits you at a point that nowhere else, nowhere else could hit you like that. And
No,
that's what we
definitely.
do. So for women, I would like to see more if we just embrace that and
Hmm.
don't become unnatural to the nurturing, then you're naturally who you're born to be. And I think that's with men now, I see they are getting more support or a different level of understanding about the level of support that they need to be who they are in this world, and then
Hmm.
come home and just be more vulnerable and don't have to wear all that armor and shield
Right.
and everything like that. And that's what the mothers and the grandmothers did for them when they saw that there was going to be danger for them. They shielded them from that so they could maintain that vulnerability, because if you always got to be a warrior, you always got to wear your armor, that
Hmm.
can get quite, so yeah. And I think women are having more of an understanding about what men need in the true role. It's not about just your roles, but what being who you naturally are, so that men can be who they naturally are, and you meet right there in the middle.
Right.
There's one,
What's
yeah.
What's interesting in Will's book, he talks about his influences through um his family, and he speaks of it as like a philosophical triangle between his father, his mother, and his grandmother. He called it like his holy trinity. He said his father taught him discipline and work. His mother was education and the desire to pursue a better version of himself as it relates to education. And then his grandmother, he said, was love. That was the word for his grandmother in terms of the impact she left on him. And I think that's not so different from most of us, in terms of the way we can break down who of our influences in our family, created the versions of ourselves that we are today. And so yes, I think that is real interesting, because I think there could be a whole conversation from men speaking about just what does that mean, and the relationship they have with the maternal side of their family, and how does that impact the decisions they make today. Um, and that's
Yeah.
interesting because even with the idea of you in this podcast, I think there's a lot of thought around, you know, that song Umi Says is such a it's such an anthem for that kind of idea, that thought of this connection, and what does that connection teach us, or what is that connection, how does that connection continue to be this guiding light as we navigate the decisions in our lives. Because it's almost every day I can reflect on something my mother or my grandmother told me in any moment of the day. I'm thinking about, oh, my mom told me this, blah blah blah. My grandmother said this. So it's so important. Um, it's
and
yeah,
that
it's
and that
definitely so
really
important.
happened. He came from an audition one day, and he was kind of bummed out. I think he wasn't sure if he was going to get it or not, because
Hmm.
you deal with rejection a lot early. And we had a discussion about words, and he was like, that the quote, "Sticks and stones may break your bones, but
Hmm.
words will never harm you." He was like, I don't believe in that. I don't like that. I don't think that's true. And it was like, yeah. He said, no, words are powerful. Words are very powerful. He was just sitting there contemplating on the audition, and I was like, don't worry about it. Just keep shining your light. That was so
Hmm.
years later he wrote the song, and then it brought me back to the conversation about words
Uh,
are powerful. So it's something like how that moment had a magical tone to it that neither
hmm.
one of us knew, but the
Right.
true connection to give each other that level of support, and you not knowing what to say, or so it wasn't
Hmm.
about the production of it. It was just the flow. And
Right.
in that flow, that's just love. That's just love. And when you're not trying to find the answer or look to say something, that it was just so right there. It was like, so when I first heard it on the radio, I was in pharmaceutical sales at the time, and I was on my way heading to, make my deliveries or whatever. and the song came on, and I literally, when I I was so excited, and then I looked up. I was at a toll booth, and I had totally I didn't know where I was going. I got so amped. I was like, oh my gosh! I had to pay the toll to try to come around, and it got me off course. But that it was just, when I think about that, and I, connect the dots to it, yeah, it's magical and funny at the same time, because I totally got lost when
That's
I had my
beautiful.
moment. But I was in the presence. I was like, oh my, I was
Right. That's
like,
beautiful.
oh my gosh, I'm gonna be late now.
I can only imagine.
That's
Yeah, that's such
good.
a beautiful.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I appreciate that. And I hope, the vision for the podcast is to just have these type of open conversations, to allow mothers who are not just mothers, but I'm so grateful, for the men that are opening up. And one of the first conversations I had was with Tip, and
hmm
he opened up about, taking care of his mom, and she's going through some bouts with Alzheimer's and stuff, and the responsibilities of
hmm
that's why I asked the question, because the responsibility of a man having to take care of their mom at a certain point,
hmm
when you're a man and mom is a woman, and but oh my God, he opened up, and it was amazing, and it opened up another gateway for men to feel comfortable. And and me having all boys, I have granddaughters now, but it's, and watching them grow,
hmm
it has done something for me too. So I'm grateful for the platform. And it's just, it's just a friendly thing. It's a friendly platform. Just no, nothing, like you said, being in the present or now, and honoring the conversation that we have the ability to have at this time, and wishing each other well on our journey. Grateful to know one another as we know one another, and just say, like they say, there's a quote that say, keep good people around you, so when you don't see the best in yourself, the people around you do. And
That's beautiful.
especially now in these days and times, and not now, but for the youth, to say, wow,
hmm
because we don't live forever, but inspiration does. So I salute you. I give kudos to you for all that you've had the ability to do just from your vision. And it is always important to have a visionary in every generation, because it uplifts the family, it inspires people and the family to continue, and nurture that. Even if it's one visionary every generation, nurture that visionary,
hmm
because there's something special about that person. There's something special about all of us. And some get it early, some get it late, but be very intuitive to those visionaries, because they're not going to just take themselves places. They're going to take people
Right.
with them, and yeah, open up the universe for more beauty, more greatness, more kindness, just all the good things that we innately were born with. So thank you. I appreciate you. I want you to keep shining your light and
Thank
continue to
you.
do all the good things that you're doing. I hope to see you real soon. And blessings to your family. And I know your grandmother recently, and you have many angels and
Yes.
ancestors, that you totally, they're proud of you, and I could tell you're shining. You're very much shining. So I
Thank you
love
so
you,
much.
B Mike. Thank you for this
Love you too.
time.
Appreciate
We
it.
will our best, and you guys, get some rest. Do this last leg, get some rest, and continue to be at your greatest. All
Thank
right.
you.
And
I
like I
appreciate it.
say, ciao for now. And you want to see B Mike? He's on Instagram at Bmike. And I'm sure you follow you on other social forms of social media. But yeah, that's enough, and it'll take you everywhere else. You're
Yeah.
here. You're definitely here. All right, get some rest, enjoy, and thank you so much. So
Thank
I
you. I
appreciate it.
appreciate it. Good
Thank
to
you.
see you. Thank
All
you.
right,
All
ciao
right.
for now.
Peace.
Umi Says, the podcast, hosted by S. Elizabeth Bay, produced by Erica Connor, executive producers Bart Phillips, Erica Connor, and Ken Johnson. Get the Umi Says podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Please subscribe and rate us. You can follow Umi Says Podcast on IG and Facebook at Umi Says Podcast. Umi Says the Podcast is a Mean Old Lion Media production.
Umi says, shine your light on the world. Shine your light